Hello and welcome to the RYLA Point of Contact training session. We've had to string together a couple of recordings here simply because I forgot to turn the recording on soon enough when we had the session on Sunday, October the 15th. So what you'll see here first is an introduction to the RYLA training session, what we're trying to accomplish and what some of the main points of the training are going to be. And then that will be followed by the recording of the session itself. So by way of introduction, let me introduce myself. I am Mike Stevenson. I am the Youth Services Chair for the district, and I'm also the RYLA Chair for the district. So the main objectives of this training session today is to go over your responsibilities of the point of contact for your club, to get you ready to start recruiting students as soon as you are finished with this recording, and to familiarize you with the RYLA website and what is out there. That website was developed to be basically one-stop shopping for any RYLA need that there is. I'm going to go over that website kind of quickly, show you what's out there, just so you know that you can get to a lot of RYLA information without having to contact somebody else. So let me tell you briefly about the goals of the recruiting and application process. First of all, we wanted it to be discoverable by students. That is, if students browsing the website, or if student comes across some of the promotional material we have, we will direct them to the website where they can learn about RYLA. And then if they continue to be interested in RYLA, we provide them a mechanism to find the Rotary Club near them. And what that means is to find you. And then they will give you a call and you will pick it up with them for the rest of the application process. We wanted to be sure that when a student fills out an application, they know who their sponsoring Rotary Club is. We have had a number of incidents in the past where students show up at RYLA and they've got no clue what Rotary Club sponsored them because they haven't talked to a Rotarian. All the recruiting was actually done by counselors or administration after high school. And we want to try to get in front of that and make sure that POCs have actually talked to the students before they send them on to RYLA. We wanted the process to be paperless. We succeeded at that. Everything can be done digitally and through email. We wanted to ensure that the POC is known to the student, if they have any questions about RYLA anywhere during the process, from the time they fill out the application until they actually show up at the Blue Ridge Assembly in Black Mountain, we wanted to be sure they know who to get hold of to answer questions for them. So in a nutshell, though, the process is really very straightforward. Either the kid finds you or you find the kid. You provide them with access to the RYLA application. And that ensures that they will know what Rotary Club is sponsoring them. They cannot get at that application unless you specifically provide them information to do that. They fill out the application, you review it, you select which kids that you want to sponsor, and there's a process that you indicate that to the RYLA team in the application itself. And then the RYLA team does the rest. And you ought to be finished with that part of the process, unless something goes astray in the waiver process, in which case you might need to get involved with the students and the parents to get that sorted out. So a couple of things. Many of you probably have been RYLA POCs last year or the year before. There's a few things that are new this year that you need to be aware of that we will go over in the training session. One is that we have better promotional material. We have videos that the students can see of what actually went on at RYLA. We have a poster that we will be asking you to distribute to your high schools to post on their walls that will allow students to find and evaluate RYLA on their own. This year, we are going to put more focus on being sure that you as the POC meet the students. We are strongly encouraging that there is an interview process that puts you in front of those students to make a selection on the student. And in that process, we want you to be ready to do a critical evaluation on the fit of that student for RYLA. We've had a number of students show up at RYLA who, for various reasons, were not a very good fit for the program. And when that happens, they slow the whole program down. And the kids don't really get much out of it. So we've got some ideas for talking to students and some helpful material for how you might kind of assess that student's fit for going to RYLA. And that's a really important part of what we're trying to accomplish this year. We've reversed the transportation policy for this year. You need to know about that. Last year, the policy was that the RYLA club was responsible for getting the student to and from RYLA. We have reversed that. The primary responsibility for getting the student to and from RYLA is now the parents. And only if the parent cannot make those arrangements will you, as the POC, get involved in helping to arrange transportation. And there's some infrastructure around that will be available to you to help you do that. We'll talk a little bit about that. Last year, you will recall that at this time, we put a lot of emphasis on something called the Student Advisory Group, where we wanted the POCs to get out and find us some kids to help plan and execute the RYLA program. We wanted that done before the beginning of the year so that we had time to train those kids on what to do. I am not asking for that this year because we have gone about recruiting for that in a little different fashion. At the end of RYLA last year, the staff and the coaches got together and made a determination on which kids we thought had the capability to come back as a RYLA student leader. And after RYLA, we invited them to come back as a student leader, and a number of them accepted that that invitation, so that we now, going into this process, have already identified the kids we need to fulfill that role for this year. So we're not asking POCs to do that anymore. So that's a brief introduction of what the training session is about. That's coming up. So what you will see next is the actual recording of that training session that took place on October the 15th. If you have questions about that, you can always call me, or what we've tried to encourage you to do is go to the RYLA website and find the answer. It's out there somewhere. And if it isn't, we would like you to let us know about that so we can continue to improve the website and its usefulness to you. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the session. All right. One of the goals we had was to make the RYLA website and RYLA itself discoverable by kids. I've been kind of encouraging clubs for a couple of years to in some cases, branch out from their traditional way of recruiting. And when I say that, what I mean is there were a number of clubs, and I'm sure there still are. The recruiting consisted of going to your interact clubs and explaining what RYLA is and getting a show of hands and taking names. And there's not a thing wrong with that. We want you to do as much of that as you feel comfortable doing. We get great kids that way. But I've been trying to kind of push the point that, you know, not all of the potential leaders in a school are in one of those kind of high achieving clubs, if you will. There's a lot of kids out there that have leadership capabilities that just haven't shown them yet. And the counselors know who those kids are. And so I'd kind of like to make entree to that demographic if we could. And toward that end, we wanted the RYLA website to be discoverable by them in case nobody approached them. So you'll see that we've got a new recruiting tool this year that is a poster that we will be asking the POCs to post in their schools, kind of advertising RYLA. And on that poster, there'll be a QR code that the kids can scan with their cell phones and find their way to the RYLA website. And now they'll be able to look at a lot of stuff out there on the website and decide whether that's something they wanted to pursue or not. But they won't be able to apply for, they won't be able to make an application unless they first contact you or one of the POCs somewhere. So we've given them a couple of tools. I'll show you those real quickly here in a minute or two. So to get the RYLA to be more discoverable by students, to try to broaden out our demographic a little bit, we wanted to make sure they know who their sponsoring club is. So we've set it up in that way. They can't get an application unless they know who the POC of their local Rotary club is. We wanted the processes, both the application and the waiver, to be paperless, and they are. And as I said before, we wanted to make the RYLA website kind of one-shop stopping. Now, it's not only just for the students, but it's also for you guys and for Rotarians in general. That any questions you might have about RYLA, we hope they're answered out there. In a nutshell, the basic process as it relates to finding and recruiting kids is either you find the student or they find you. They get hold of you and you give them access to the application. They fill out the application, and then you, after you've got those applications, in some cases actually before you do, then you assess the kids and decide which ones you want to sponsor. And then you move the kids a little bit farther forward in the pipeline, and the RYLA team kind of takes it from there. And that's all paperless. So that's in a nutshell what goes on. Now, some of you have been POCs in prior years, and so you know a lot of this stuff, but this will be a good refresher for you. But there's a few new things this year we wanted to talk about. One of them I've already discussed, which is better promotional material. We got three things going for us this year that we didn't have the last time we did this. One is that we've got very good video of the RYLA event and a lot of pictures. And that stuff is posted out on the website where kids can get at it and look at it and make a judgment as to whether RYLA works for them. This year I am trying to push more, make a bigger focus on having the recruiters, the POCs, actually meet the kids. We had a lot of kids that showed up at RYLA last time who did not know a Rotarian before they got there. In some cases, they haven't talked to one at all. And some clubs I know have kind of gotten in the habit of just giving the flyers and the promotional material to counselors and then taking whatever names they get back. And that's been, reasonably successful. The counselors have a pretty good idea who the kids are, but the kids ought to be familiar with a Rotarian when they show up at RYLA. And so we're trying to encourage all the POCs to interview their kids and know something about them. It's good for the kid, and it also helps make decisions on which kids that you want to send. So that's a big push this year. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. The biggest change for the POCs probably is we've changed the transportation policy. You may recall that in prior years, the policy was that the Rotary Club had the responsibility of getting students to and from RYLA. And they could do that. They could assign that to parents if they wanted to. This year, we've turned that around. This year, the primary responsibility of getting kids to and from RYLA is on the parents. And only if the parents cannot work it out should a Rotarian get involved. And in that case, we have a little bit of a new process the Rotarian would have to go to, because at that point, the RYLA team is not involved in the transportation. However, we do want to make sure that the transportation is handled according to our youth protection policies and the kids are safe getting to and from RYLA. And one of the things that requires is if you have to get involved in making transportation arrangements for the kids, you're going to need to pull a waiver off of the website, get it to the parent, get it signed, and get it back to all of us. Because one of the things that we knew last year at the end of RYLA that we did not handle the checkout and dismissal of the kids very well. And it was, quite frankly, not safe because we did not know which cars kids were getting into. And we have determined to fix that problem this year. So we'll have a new waiver policy where the parents will tell us in advance which drivers are authorized to pick their kid up. And as I just said, if you guys have to get involved, we'll have a process by which the parents give you written permission to pick up their kid. And I'll say right now, this is a new endeavor for us. So I'm sure there's going to be some situations come up that we haven't thought of yet. And you're going to have to help us work through that as we come across these transportation issues. We're going to have to deal with them on the fly. So the other thing you may remember from last year at this time is that I put a lot of emphasis on getting you all out early to find us kids that wanted to help us plan and in some ways execute the program at RYLA. And I called that the student advisory group. We still have one of those, but we handled the recruitment of students in a different manner. We, at the end of RYLA last year, the coaches and the staff put our heads together and made some determinations about which kids we saw that we think would be qualified to be student leaders, that had the right respect of their peers at RYLA and the right maturity levels and all that kind of stuff. And we identified a bunch of those kids, and then we invited them to come back and join us at RYLA as student leaders, or in the other group we've got called student program support. And so as a result of that, we've got 12 or I think 16 kids total identified who wanted to be in one of those roles. And 12 of them will end up being in the student leadership role. We are currently in the process of developing exactly what that means to them, so that before RYLA, we'll have a series of meetings with them, possibly some Zoom level training sessions, and we will teach them what to do. And this is going to be something that both the student leader needs to do and the coach needs to do, because they will be co-leading those small teams that we use in RYLA. But from your perspective, what that means is we've already got those kids identified. And we intend to do that again this year at the end of our next RYLA. So Vicki, I see you've got your hand up there.
Yeah. Student leaders, do they still fill out an application for RYLA?
Yes, they will. They haven't filled one out yet. They filled out an application at the end of RYLA last year to be a student leader, but they're still going to need to go ahead and go through the whole process of the regular application. And, okay, you can, all the clubs that have student leaders returning, I have notified their POCs, if they had one, or their president, that was the case. So they know which kids are wanting to return, and they can encourage them to fill out an application, but we will also be sending stuff to them, reminding them that they have to fill out an application, and some notifications that we'll be meeting with them.
Thank you.
So there you go on that one. All right, so let me go ahead and start sharing some information here, and some of this I'll go through really quickly. I think everybody here has been a POC. Jay, were you a POC last year for your club?
I was not.
Okay, well, it's new to you then. So let me see if I can get screen sharing fired up here, and we'll go through a few things really quickly. First thing I want to talk about, I assume you all can see that out there.
Yes.
First thing I wanted to go through real quickly is RYLA point of contact and responsibilities, and a few things I want to highlight for you. And by the way, every document I'll be showing you here today is on the RYLA website. Most of them are in the Rotarian section. Yeah, actually, let me back up just a second here and show you the website. This is the home page of the RYLA website you're looking at right here. And as you can see, there's several different tabs across the top. We're looking at the general information tab, you know, what is RYLA and the history of it and all that kind of stuff, kind of boilerplate kind of things. The sections that you will be most interested in is this one called the Rotarian section. And if you're first opening this up, I've already opened this today, so I have already put in the password. To get to the data in this section, you will need a password to proceed. And that password is RYLA 7670, all caps. And that'll get you into this section. And when you get into it, what you'll see, I'm just going to show you really quickly, and we'll be talking about some of these documents. There's the point of contacts responsibility document that I had up a minute ago. And here are the other ones, the managing applications, how you do that, details about that, the document you give to kids so that they can get to the application, some things about recruitment strategies, this what is RYLA is something you can share with school administration if you're working through them to try to identify students. The student fire is what the students see, that they can make a decision for themselves on whether they want to see RYLA. So that's kind of all the documents in that section. If you go to the student section, you'll see this here, and this is the one the kids will be directed to. If they scan any of those QR codes that I was talking about earlier, they will come to this page here. And when they will come to this page, they will see another QR code right here, which takes them to the video of last year's RYLA event, so that they can see what kids were actually doing at RYLA and look at what a great time those kids were having, actually. There's information here about to the parents and guardians about what RYLA is about from their perspective and the things we do to try to keep them safe, their kids safe, and what their responsibilities are. And there's some information on how the kids, if they decide they want to apply to RYLA, they'll go here and read this document and it will tell them how to do that. I'm going to go over those documents real quickly here so that you know what they are. But that's just kind of an overview of what's in the RYLA website. So what we were starting to talk about is what POC responsibilities are. You're the single point of contact with the RYLA team for your club. And it is very helpful to us if you try to maintain that single point of contact responsibility. When I start getting directed to different members of the club who are either recruiting or talking about RYLA in some fashion or other, it gets kind of confusing for us because we've got 45 clubs to deal with. So if you can try to maintain that you're the single point of contact, that would be fantastic. We expect you to be knowledgeable of the RYLA processes and deadlines. You are the master recruiter for your club with both the schools and the students, whatever is required to try to find us some kids. You're the recruiter of the students. Now you can and may well want to set yourself up a little team in your club to recruit the kids that apply for RYLA. Or the kids that you want to encourage to apply for RYLA. We're going to talk a little bit about that here in a minute, but you're encouraged to talk to them, and you're the one that's responsible to assess their ability to participate in RYLA. This is a point where I also want to tell you that we, the RYLA team, do not talk to kids to try to vet them for their suitability for RYLA. Once you tell us that you want to sponsor that candidate is in RYLA. He is accepted, provided that nothing goes south with the waiver process. The way the system works is he submits an application, you decide on whether you want to sponsor him, and you tell RYLA team by putting them into a category on the application that we recognize. We send the parents a waiver package, and when that package comes back to us properly signed, then that kid is in, and we will send that kid a text telling him that they've been accepted to RYLA. We've had kids call us in the past that had been accepted but didn't know they were accepted because nobody got back to them, right? And so we will, at least at a minimum, get back to them, but you ought to also and tell them that they've been accepted to RYLA. And here, that last bullet point here is addresses the primary responsibility of transportation is now the parents' responsibility. Okay, that clear, everybody?
Yes.
All right, so we went briefly over the content of the RYLA website. I'm going to go back there now, and we're going to start talking about some of the documents here. The one I want to start out with is this one that's down here called Recruitment Strategies. Okay, so I'm going to bring that one up right now. Okay, this is a recommended recruiting process for RYLA, and we see basically kind of three ways that this can happen. Option one you see there is kind of the traditional way that you are recruiting through your Interact club. And or it may be some other club at the school, but some clubs that you have familiarity with and some relationship. And you go to them and talk to them as a group or individually, whichever you choose. What is RYLA all about? You give them the student flyer, or you direct them to get that flyer from the website, however you want to do that. And then it's up to the student at that point to fill out an application. I'm going to talk about your responsibilities there in a minute, so hold questions on that, please, for just a moment. After you have selected and notified the RYLA team with the application process, who the students are that you want to sponsor, I'm a step ahead here. So you've got some students, you've looked at them, you say, I would like this kid to apply. You may not have selected them for sponsorship yet. You may want to get, if you're a club that has a limited number of kids you can sponsor, you may want to collect several applications and review them and determine which kids you want to sponsor. And you do that on the application systems. But once you've identified, if you've been talking to kids and you've identified ones that you want to sponsor, you can give them the document right there that allows them to access the application. So we're going to get to that document in just one brief second here. So that's one way it can happen. You talk to them, you decide on the spot that you want them to apply. You give them a access document that allows them to get to the application. The other way you can do it, and a lot of clubs do this, they work through the principals, counselors, and teachers to find students to apply. And so we've got a document out there that is called What is RYLA for Use with School Administration. And I'm bring that document up real quick. Here it is. And this is one you can leave in the hands of administration or counselors to tell them about RYLA. It kind of defines, first of all, who's Rotary, and that we're a large international respected organization. Then it talks about what is RYLA, kind of at the high point level. It's a 3-day, 3-night event. It's free to the kids. It'll develop kids as leaders, expose them to various community leaders and professional speakers. And importantly, it'll allow them to meet and network with like-minded peers in our district. Talks a little bit about the techniques we use to teach at RYLA. And then it says what kind of student should attend. And this is what we would like them to find. If you don't know who these such kids are, you would like them to give you a candidate list of these kind of kids, that they know they've got leadership potential, that they're open-minded kids, they're kind of well-behaved kids, and that they're willing to work and learn. This RYLA experience is fun for the kids, but it's challenging, and they've got to be willing to buckle down and do some work. So once you get that list, then you can either talk to those kids first, or you can choose to just give them access to the application, in which case they will fill out an application. You will see that application when you go to the RYLA RYLA tab in DACDB, and then you can start making your decisions about which of those kids you want to sponsor. And you can do that through an interview process or some other method. If you know some other way of knowing those kids, or if you've already talked to them, you can use that information. But this is really the point, that if these are new kids to you, this is really the point, we'd like you to go to the school and talk to those kids. Okay, so let's see. So let me show you here what happens next on the. Let's see if that's it. This is the document that you're looking at now is what we call the application access document. The way this one is designed is that it gives the kids the link, which is this one that right down here, that actually takes them directly to the application. And once they go there, they can start filling it out immediately. If this top paragraph here is one, if the kids discover RYLA, this RYLA website, and they're interested in it, but nobody's talked to them, they don't know any Rotarians, this is the one that they are supposed to look at to try to make those decisions. And when they get here, they will find a document to help them. I'll bring that one up right now. If they're here, so here's a situation: a kid has discovered RYLA through the RYLA website, either because you've given them the QR code and with the student flyer, or because he's picked it up off a poster or something like that. So he's been to the RYLA website. He's looked at all the stuff he can get at and says, yeah, this sounds interesting. I would like to take a shot at going to RYLA. So he will see in the student section this document coming up right here. It's called How to Apply. Okay. And what it basically says is that if you've already been given the application and then you know all you need to know to apply. And the main thing is, if you remember that document that we were looking at earlier, let me go back to it real quickly, application access document, this one. This document is a fillable document. So what you would do is download yourself a version of this document and fill in this information, what club you're with, who you are, what the contact in that club is, and how the student can get hold of that club. And then you would send it back to the kid. And now the kid has everything he needs to fill out the application. Okay. If there's a kid that has found RYLA that you haven't given that document to, then they end up on this document here. And what this says is, if you don't know a Rotarian, haven't been given a document, find the Rotary Club out of this list that's nearest to you, and here's the contact information for the person at that club that you ought to call and that or talk to. And that person can then take it from there. Either do a phone interview or send you the application or whatever your club decides your process is going to be. Okay. So we tried to make it easy for the kids. It's still possible that kids may not know which club to contact. At the bottom of this document says, if you don't know that, call me. It says that somewhere around here, I think. Yeah, it says call me, and I'll help you determine which club you ought to contact. So now we got a situation where you found the kids, they have got access to the application, and they're filling out an application. I guess the one document I haven't showed you yet that you want to look at is the document that you can give to students. Let me see where I find it. Here it is. The document you can give to students. This is one you could carry with you or email to friends, to students that you already know or something like that. But this is the one that kind of gives the student a high level view, hopefully kind of whets his appetite to learn more. And at the bottom of this document, there's a QR code, and there's also the RYLA website URL there. And he would go to one of these to actually get to the RYLA website. Okay, and if you've just given kids this document, and you haven't discussed with them what RYLA is, or if they want to know more about RYLA, then they follow this link and they get to the student section of the RYLA website. Okay, so now we've got a situation where you've selected the kids, and the kids have all been given access to the application. So here's what happens then. They fill out the application, and I'll show you the application here in just a minute. But this is pretty important here, this part. As the POC, it is your responsibility to check periodically to see if any applications have been submitted for you to sponsor. This system does not automatically notify you when a student that has identified your club as a sponsor, when they have submitted an application, you're not automatically notified. So you have to periodically go to the RYLA the RYLA application in DACDB and determine if there's any kids out there for you. And you get to this by, if you are a POC, you have been given a security level of 3 at least. Most of you probably already have that kind of a level. But the level of security level 3 allows you to see the RYLA icon. When you go to DACDB and you click on the district tab, you will see a bunch of icons that come up. One of them will be the RYLA icon, and it'll very clearly say RYLA. If you're a POC and you don't see that, you need to give me a call, and I will make sure it gets out there to where you can see it. But when you do see it and you click on it, this is the screen that you will see next. This will have the listing of any student that has listed your club as a sponsor that has been submitted to RYLA, to DACDB, to RYLA through DACDB, I should say. In this case, this is an application I worked up this morning and stuck it out there. But this would be for my club. You can only see the ones for your own club. So the key things here is, if anybody in your club's not a level 3 security with DACDB, they won't be able to get here. And when they do get here, they will only be able to see the applications that have been submitted by your club. So let me really quickly show you what the application looks like. There it is. It comes up. Now this one's already filled out. When the student originally sees that, it'll basically be the same in a little different format. So the student goes on down here, and there's some information that they need to know about filling out the application, and the things that are important to us from RYLA, that we need these documents electronically signed by them if they're the student, or by their parent guardian if we've sent something to their parent or their guardian. So when they come through here, when they're filling this out, they check who's sponsoring you, and there here is a drop-down menu that they can choose their club from, and they know this information because when you gave them the application access document, it specified what club was sponsoring them. Okay, so there's that. Then this is the kind of standard boilerplate information that you would expect: name and contact information, T-shirt size, their contact information, their home phone if they got one, their cell number. There's a box down here where they give us permission to text them using their cell number. who their emergency contact is and what that phone number is. And then we want to know something about what schools these kids are coming from and what grade they're in. So there's some questions about that. There's some questions regarding Interact, if they're in a club, an officer, et cetera. And then there's a signature. They need to read this little paragraph in front of the signature because this is one of the places where we tell them, we expect you to act like a leader. Poor behavior will not be tolerated. And if in the judgment of the staff at RYLA, you're not behaving yourself properly, we're going to call your parents and they're going to have to come pick you up. And they attest to this by signing this. And then they give us their parent and guardian information. And this little block of information here is critical to us because it has the parent and guardian email address on it. Having that address is what allows us to send a waiver package directly to the parents as opposed to sending it to the kid and assuming that the student is going to pass it on to their parents. This gives us a little bit of legal cover that basically the parent or guardian has actually seen and signed these waiver documents. So that's a pretty critical piece of information that we never had before. All right, so let me go back up to the top of this here and talk about what your responsibilities are. When you first go to this document and you've only got, say, one student enter into it, you click on that student, what will come up will look like this, except that the only item here in this pipe, this is the status pipeline of your student. The only document, the only status that will be colored in is this application entered one. And that basically tells you that the student has applied for your sponsorship. That doesn't mean he's been accepted, doesn't necessarily mean that you have accepted the sponsor. It just means that he wants to go and he wants you to review the application and move him through the process. When you see that document, the very first time you see it, we want you to click this next box that says application and review. That tells the RYLA team that you are aware that there's an application out there. If we know when these applications were submitted and we review them periodically during the week. And if there's an application sitting out there that hasn't been moved into review, after a couple of weeks, we will probably have to send you an email telling you that you've got an application out there. And last year we had to do this multiple times for some POCs, and that's just extra work for the RYLA team to do. So it's really helpful if you periodically look, see your applications, move it into review. Now, if you're a club that has pre-selected the students before you've ever given them access to the application, then you already know you want to sponsor that kid. So what you need to do then is, first of all, look over the application to make sure that all that data looks sensible and reasonable to you. And for example, that the telephone numbers look like telephone numbers and they're not alphanumeric data, and that they're not all the same telephone number and those kind of things. That's kind of your responsibility to do that. We don't do that. Then when you believe that application is properly filled out, then you move the application to this status, POC submitted. And then what that tells the RYLA team is that you have decided to sponsor this kid, and it triggers us to send a waiver package to the parents. And that's what we will do. And as soon as we've sent that waiver package out, we will move that application into the waiver sent package. And then at that point, you guys are done at that point, unless the waiver process doesn't work properly. then we will wait for that waiver to return. And typically what we will do is it doesn't, most of the time, 80% of the time, it'll come back to us filled out within a couple of days. If it doesn't, we will typically follow directly with an email to the parent that says, you know, we're waiting on your waiver package and you understand your child can't go to RYLA unless you fill this out. And we will do that automatically a couple of times. But if we still haven't got it, got the waiver back, then we're going to get a phone, we're going to give you a phone call or a email, and we're going to turn that over to you, and then we're going to back out of it and let you resolve whatever issue is going on with the waiver. And so once we get a completed waiver package, no matter how it has come to us, once it's completed, then we move that application into the candidate status.
Back home.
And at that point, the student has been accepted to RYLA. And we're done. Everybody's basically done at that point, unless there's transportation issues that come up. And transportation issues, as I mentioned before, are basically between you and the student and the parents. So we don't get involved in that. So that is kind of how the application process works.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On the when they scan, you know, the code, is there a password that the student needs to get to the application?
No, all he needs is that document, and if he clicks on that link in the document, it'll take him right in.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Just check.
Yeah.
Be back in a few minutes.
Okay.
So that is kind of what this is all about. What I'd like to just spend a minute or two talking about you, and maybe Rick can help out with this, or possibly Vicky. Rick and Vicky were both coaches last year at RYLA, so they were there for the duration and saw and dealt with the kids in a much closer fashion than I did. So they know more about what actually occurred during RYLA. There were, as I mentioned earlier, kids that were sent to us sight unseen. That applications were received by the POCs and the club, and they just approved them and passed them on without any assessment of that child at all. And that's why we are trying to encourage all the clubs to build some sort of interview process into their recruiting so that they have an opportunity to meet and talk with these kids. And they can assess them and ask them questions that might give you, as a POC, some insight in their suitability for RYLA. You know, do you think these kids are going to be, you think these kids have the potential to be leaders? You think they're going to go there and be hardworking and take it seriously? And other things you might just find out through an interview with the student. So we're pushing that really hard, and at some point in this process, this year or next year, we may make that an absolute requirement. In other words, mandatory, in which we will have some way of determining whether students have actually been met with Rotarians or not. So for this year, the best that I'm able to do is I've called it required in some of the documents that you'll see. I've got no real way of enforcing that this year, but please, as POCs, take it seriously and get out there and talk to your kids. So Rick and I in particular have been talking a little bit about how such a conversation might go. And I think I'll turn it over to Rick, see if he's got some insights he can add to this here.
Thanks, Mike. I'll start, and I would just say that I like to view and express that opportunity to meet with potential Rylarians as an assessment of fit and an assurance, as Mike's intimated, that they are a good candidate, perhaps in a competitive sense, that they have the right leadership and qualities and work ethic and so on, but also in the other direction, that they come reasonably well aware of what to expect at RYLA. I think some kids were not ready, were not good fits for the level of physical and sometimes emotional stress and the variety of activities and stimulus and so on. And they need to, a lot of what they told us in response when we debriefed was it would have been helpful for them to know more about what they were getting into. So if any of you have not been a coach, have not been to the event, and that might be difficult for you to express to a candidate, on behalf of all those who have coached, and Mike knows who all of them are, including myself and Vicky, we'd be happy to join you for a Zoom call to if you've got a candidate or two that would like to talk to students and or coaches who've been there, and just kind of answer their questions about the experience. And certainly there's a lot of great materials now on the website that weren't there before. So the sense of going to RYLA for a 3-day residential experience without some sense of connection to someone and a conversation about what to expect when you get there can be a pretty big hurdle for some of our high school students. So I think there's strong encouragement, quasi requirement. What we found is where POCs or coaches who have talked to students, we have much fewer problems. And it's, I think, as much about awareness of what's to come as it might be even to the fit or appropriateness of the candidate, although both are certainly important. Vicky, what would you add?
Vicky's driving a car.
Safely.
There she
Sorry, I was
goes.
trying to get unmuted.
Yeah, I knew.
Be safe, Vicky.
Yeah, Rick, I think you summed it up. I think certainly the RYLA staff and coaches would appreciate it very much if there was some evaluation done before they get to us. We definitely had a few issues last year. So yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's not fair to them either if they're not evaluated and know what to expect. I think our kids are, they're at a point, I don't know if most of the kids want to know. They've got to know the agenda. They've got to know what's going on. And if they don't, some of them spiral out. And so we don't want that to happen. So we really appreciate your help there.
And if this all sounds a little cryptic to the rest of you, as a member of the program team that Mike leads, some elements of the program were triggering to kids who might be more vulnerable to anxiety or stress or overwhelm. And that is much more common in 2023 than it was even in 2019 when I was at RYLA as part of the coaching staff. So there are things that kids are going through in aggregate having to do with mental health and their own self-regulation and ability to have a higher threshold to decompensation or emotional breakdown. Our kids are different, and we're trying to understand ways through updating the program, providing support on site, the things that we have to step up and make sure we do to make sure that the event is physically and emotionally safe for every kid. That's crucial. And we need the help of the POCs to make sure no student comes to RYLA without a reasonably clear expectation of what the experience is like. So it's kind of got to work from both of those ends.
Can I ask 2 questions real quick?
Yeah.
Rick, okay, so I haven't been a coach, but I had 3 of my daughters actually have been to RYLA over the years. all described it as a life-changing experience, and they just had a wonderful time. And I know I'm a lawyer. I mean, I know you can't be too specific, but can you give, since I'm going to be doing the screening sort of, can you be a little bit more specific about kind of some of the issues you had this past year? Because that's the kind of news to me.
Yeah. Mike,
Yeah,
you want to do this? Or you want me to?
Well, let me cover it, and you can chime in or correct me if I got something wrong. Like I said, I wasn't as close to the kids as the coaches were, but I was aware of the kind of issues that we had. We had some kids show up that really were there. I'm not sure why they were there. They weren't there because they wanted to be there. Some of them were maybe there because mama said it would be a good experience for them or something like that. And so they applied and got accepted. And we had one kid showed up in pajamas every day. He wasn't really very interested in being with the program, you know. And I don't know whether you could have seen that at an interview or not, but if you ask kind of a simple question that says, what is your intention here in going to RYLA? What do you expect to get out of it? You might get an answer that would give you some insight into that kind of issue. We had some kids that were physically unable to do things. There is a lot of physicality in the 3-day event. There's a lot of walking involved. It's about, I don't know, a little more than a quarter of a mile, maybe a half a mile down a hill to some of the field event venues and back up again. We had kids couldn't do that. They just really couldn't walk it. We had kids that, and I'm not saying a kid should be excluded necessarily because of some of these things, but we had kids that were pretty far over the weight limit for some of the activities that YMCA provides there as weight limits on some of those high ropes and things like that, and kids couldn't do that. But if any of those things are cases, at a minimum, you know, the student needs to know that there are those kind of restrictions and those kind of requirements. And we need to know if the student still, you know, wants to come. We need to know so that we can make appropriate accommodations for that. And we're willing to try to accommodate a lot of things. But at the same time, if you get too many kids that are, for instance, non-participatory, they start to drag other kids with them, you know, and that's just not a good situation when you have that. So to the extent that you could recognize those things with an interview, we would like you to at least try. We had kids come to us that we're not too willing to obey the rules. We don't have a lot of rules at RYLA. And if you want to look in the student section, I asked our web guy, Sean Ham, to post the rules that we decided on here a few weeks ago. You can take a look at them. They're very simple. But we had kids trying to sneak out of dorms at night. They're not allowed to walk around on the campus at night, for sure. And particularly when their intent was to get to the buildings where the girls were. So, and we had some kids that when confronted trying to do that said, well, I'm 18, I can do what I want. Well, yeah, well, no, they can't. But if you were to detect a kid that you thought had that attitude, you know, don't sponsor them, please. You know, so those we had some kids that had what Rick was maybe alluding to is kind of extraordinary anxiety issues. They would get to some place and start, you know, hemming and hawing about whether to do it or not to do it, or, you know, looking to others for support. There's nothing wrong with that, but you know, when you get a whole small group trying to support one kid, they're holding up the whole program when that's going on. So, you know, if some of those situations can be observed in an interview, that would be helpful as well.
Do we have any paperwork that sort of sets out basic requirements,
We,
physical and emotional?
Well, no, not directly. We're gonna produce a document that will be designed to help POCs have those kind of conversations with students.
Okay,
And I don't even really want to think about them as an interview in the sense that you normally think of an interview for a job or anything else. It really needs to be more of a conversation that's guided into areas that might give you some insights that would help you decide on the kids.
got it.
And we will have that document shortly, and we'll post it in the Rotarian section on the website. And its purpose will be to guide POCs in having those kind of conversations.
Thank you.
Rick, you got anything to add to that?
Well, I did make reference to some programmatic changes. There were some one or two elements in the program that seemed to challenge those who, let's just say, might be on the margins of you know, as a retired physician, I would say subclinical anxiety or depression. And there are, you know, 20 to 30% of students in this age group right now are carrying that. So it isn't that my perspective anyway, Mike can correct me on this, is we don't want to completely filter out any kid who has an expression of anxiety or depression in his or her past. This is an opportunity to connect with those kids, build connection and purpose, and allow them to experience the support of their peers in a very different way than they normally do. There's a lot of upside there. However, if we have kids who are in more frank circumstances in terms of their mental health status, or have motivation issues or compliance issues like Mike was referring to, that disrupts our ability even to help those kids. So that doesn't help anybody. So it's a very fine line. And we are updating both the program elements that seem to be problematic for even those with borderline challenges in anxiety and depression, or low thresholds for emotional decompensation. We want to make that safer for those kids, and yet, and also make sure our staff is trained and we have the resources on site to support them in the ways that they needed to. And I don't think we had those things lined up as well as they need to be going forward. And some of that just has to do with the general mental health issues confronting this generation of kids. Vicki, any comments on that?
No, I think you nailed it. No, I think you're good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so particularly if you're a new point of contact, I do a lot of work in our community around youth mental health. We suffered 3 teen suicides about a year and a half ago. I'm available and comfortable anytime to talk through if there's a child who seems to be, you have concerns about their mental health status, whether it's, you know, if the counselor at your high school is not yet involved in assessing or giving you feedback on them, that's what I would do first. And if you have questions or just kind of an uncomfortable feel, you can reach out to me anytime, and I'd be happy to do anything I could help to make the best decision for that kid.
I would just make an editorial comment, and I appreciate your mentioning or framing it as a balancing act and being careful at the same time. I hope we never lose the aspect of the 3 days that's involved sort of challenging kids, getting them to, you know, deal with trusting others and the things that leadership qualities are all about. And you know, I could see how that could be lost in some of this if you're too careful. So
we could throw the baby out with the bathwater, because
right.
what RYLA offers, what Interact offers, are some of the most needed elements for kids who are currently struggling with mental health.
Right.
And I want us to be inclusive and supportive of those kids as much as anybody else. Not more, not less, as much.
That covers pretty much what I wanted to cover here in this meeting with you all today. I think I mentioned earlier, we will open the student applications tomorrow. So if you got kids you already know you want to send, or if you got a note from me telling you that you've got kids that want to return to RYLA as leaders and we've accepted them, you can go ahead and tell those kids, send them to the application and get them to fill out now.
And Mike, if I could just add one closing comment, I'm particularly excited about us taking the next step in peer-based leadership for our small group activity. That will be formally implemented this year with those selected student leader candidates, the coaches identified last year, and we'll be working from now till April to make sure that those leaders are equipped and prepared to provide leadership, peer-based leadership at the small group level. There, I think, are some really amazing things that can happen once we have that fully and well implemented. They will always have a Rotary coach at their elbow to guide them, so it's safe for them as well. But I think that that evolution of our RYLA to the point where kids are providing and receiving leadership from each other is really pretty exciting.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, thanks for showing up here today. And like I said, if you got questions that you can't find an answer to on the website, let me know, and we will put them out there.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mike.
So thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.